Alright, so there's a couple things I'd like to go over today. First off, before I start talking about what I would like to talk about, I'm going to talk about what I'm going to be doing for Path of Fire. Normally I just make videos. I've been meaning to do live streaming via the YouTube live streaming program, not Twitch. I don't like Twitch. So I will probably do that the day of Path of Fire releases. I will probably have a live YouTube stream on that date, which would be this coming Friday. I'm not sure what time of day I'll do it. I'll probably do it whenever I can get online, which will probably be about midday. It's about 12 or 1 o'clock. I don't know. I might do it later if there's no one's really interested in watching at noon, since I know a lot of y'all are probably at work or whatever. So we'll see how that goes. So if you want to mention in the comments as to what time you would rather see a Twitch or a stream, because I really don't know when you guys watch my stuff at all, because YouTube doesn't tell me that. So if you can just put that in the comments, what you would prefer. Not sure if I'll be doing PvE or PvP for the stream. I might do the PvE since that's also new stuff. Since I've kind of done the elite specs in PvP, but I don't know. We'll see what whoever shows up for the stream wants. That's probably how that's going to work. I know all of my videos so far have been about PvP, but in case you couldn't tell by my armor, I also do PvE, so, you know. Just a random side note. If you're wondering why there hasn't been too many videos, my queue has been permanently stuck for the past couple of days, so I can't exactly PvP right now. It's very depressing. ArenaNet used to have a dedicated thread that you could just post in to get unstuck, but since they've revamped their forums, that thread has not reappeared, and they have not been responding to my pleas to save me. I expect they'll probably get around to it this week, since it is kind of the weekend right now, but for now I kind of can't do anything in PvP right now, which is very, very sad for me. So much for getting caught up on the minimum ranked requirements. Since I'm still behind the 60 games. I was almost caught up. Oh well. That's about it for the announcements. Now on to what I actually wanted to talk about, which was Vitality and Necromancer. So traditionally, Necromancers have always used Vitality amulets. We don't really use toughness on much of anything. And the reasoning for this is very simple, which is our Lifeforce pool scales with our health, and this is our total health, not our base health. Meaning the more vitality you have, the bigger your pool is. And since our Lifeforce pool on Reaper and base Necro is basically health, that means you can treat Lifeforce gain as healing. So having a bigger pool, since our weapons are percent of Lifeforce, so this gives 2% Lifeforce per hit. If I have a bigger pool, 2% is a larger number, since 2% of a bigger number is, well, bigger, so which means functionally, in terms of theory crafting, you can think of increasing your base health as increasing your self-healing, since you can treat life force as self-healing, and the bigger your life force pool, the more life force you're gaining from weapon skills. And that's one of the big reasons you always use Vitality on a Necromancer, because again, it's effectively the biggest increase to your self-sustain. However, this is actually kind of backed Necromancer into a corner, because if you look at the profession, if you exclude the fact that your life force pool scales with your base health, there's no reason that a Necromancer would ever want to be stacking Vitality other than your life force pool scales with it. Because we don't have a lot of self-healing. I mean, obviously, as I said earlier, you can count life force gain as healing, but if you ignore the life force gain, our actual self-healing is really bad. Even with blood magic, it's still barely up to what other professions do. If that's running a full life siphon blood magic build, you can just barely get what other professions do in respect to your health. And if you're stacking HP, so like on my current build, I have 28,000 health. With 28,000 health, I don't have the self-healing to refill that. I am dependent on someone else healing me to refill that pool. And that's kind of why stacking Vitality just doesn't make sense on a Necro, because you can never actually refill your health pool. So if you look at Condi Necro, which generally uses Carrion, they have a 30,000 health point pool. But at the same time, they have terrible health self-healing. They have worse self-healing than Power Necro does. They can't even begin to even slightly recuperate their health pool. Particularly since they're generally running Consume Conditions on its 30-second cooldown. Like, they just don't have the healing. And that's why Condi Necro, or Condi Reaper I should say, absolutely has to have a support with them. Like, they don't function without a support because they cannot refill their health. They need to have that support ally to refill their health. And it's kind of the same with Power Necro. It's just Power Necro's Lifeforce generation is so crazy high, they can basically, as I mentioned earlier, use that Lifeforce generation has healing as long as they're correctly using their Shroud to soak damage. And even then, Power Necro does have somewhat better healing from Blighter's Boon. But even then, Power Necro still has the same issue in that we can't really refill our health bar well, particularly if we're taking focus, which is again why Necromancer needs support so much. However, if you are to look at any class that has, you know, weaker self-healing, what they really need to be having is toughness, because toughness reduces the amount of damage you take. And the less damage you take, the less healing you need to keep your health pool refilled. So realistically, once you ignore Shroud, every Necro would want to be taking toughness because it keeps them alive better than Vitality does. Now, I'm sure someone's going to say, but Vitality gives us a buffer against condition damage, since toughness doesn't affect condition damage. And sure, that's a true statement. However, it's not Vitality does not reduce the damage you're taking from condition, so you still have to heal all of that damage. You still have to heal just as much damage to recoup those Condi damage as you would if you were running toughness or Vitality. It doesn't matter, you're still taking the same damage from Condis regardless of toughness or Vitality. But with toughness, you're taking way less power damage, and I will say, as much as people like to complain about Condis, the vast majority of damage you take as a Necro is coming in as power damage. And running a toughness setup is somewhat noticeable in your ability to refill your health pool. Not just because it's smaller, but also because, again, you're taking way less damage. But again, because our Life Force pool scales with Vitality, we're still pushed into taking Vitality. And you know, for Reaper and Core Necro, you know, it's still better to have Vitality for staying alive. So it makes sense, but I don't think we should continue. I would like to see Necromancer changed so that your Life Force pool does not scale with your Vitality. Rather, it has a fixed number that is larger than the base Vitality pool, or the base Life Force pool, because our base Life Force pool right now is, I think, 19,000. Let me see. Yeah, so our base, that's not even that, it's 15,000. So yeah, that's really small. So I would like to see it increase to, say, 20,000 or something as a base. And then just make it so that it doesn't scale with your Vitality, because this would actually help the class a lot. Because if we don't have to stack Vitality, we can take Toughness, which means we might actually be able to be self-sufficient in the survival. Now, we wouldn't be completely self-sufficient, because again, our self-healing is bad. But it wouldn't be as bad as it is right now, because we would again be taking less damage. And we would definitely see a noticeable survivability increase against, like, a thief, like a power thief of any type. You know, one of the reasons things like Thief and Glass Power Warriors suck so much for Necro is they just deal so much more damage that we can never hope to sustain. And if we had Toughness, we'd be doing a little better at sustaining. Now, we wouldn't be perfect. We'd still get beaten down, but we would live longer and be able to do more. Another reason I bring this up, and the reason I'm bringing this discussion up now, is because Scourge is coming. And Scourge, since it doesn't have Shroud, Life Force doesn't even count as healing for Scourge. It's just a resource. But at the same time, since Scourge is completely gated on its effectiveness by its ability to gain life force to spend on skills, so it's F skills, you end up being forced to stack Vitality on Scourge, even though Scourge has even less of a reason to be running a Vitality stacked build once you ignore the fact that it needs it for its resource generation. Because Scourge, you don't even have Shroud. You want to be reducing your healing as much, your damage taken, sorry. You want to be reducing your damage taken as much as possible because Scourge doesn't have good self-healing. Like, Scourge's self-healing is no better than regular Necros. And of course it doesn't have Shroud, so it needs to be taking toughness. Like, Scourge has to be taking toughness. It's also worth noting that Scourge has better synergy with existing amulets, because if you look at the available Kandi amulets, we have Sage, which is Vitality with Power, no precision. We have Rabid, which is Toughness with precision. And then we have Carrion, which is Vitality with Power. If you're running Power on Scourge, you can't make use of curses, because, I mean, this is on crit, this is on crit, you don't really care about that. I mean, this is so little use that... I mean, you can't make use of these without crit. This kind of helps your crit, but it doesn't give you a lot. This requires crit. I mean, this is just kind of bad, and this is requiring a Scepter. So you end up with the problem where you can't use this, you can't use this, and you can't use that at all without precision. Now, current Carrion Kandi Necro gets away with it, because current Carrion Kandi Necro takes Death Perception, so they can deterministically proc these things when they're in Shroud. But you're not going to be using that on Scourge, because first off, Death Perception is really mediocre on Scourge, because they only get it when they use their 20-second cooldown F5 that only lasts for about 5 seconds. And Doomfire is basically necessary for Scourge anyways, because it adds a burn to every single one of Scourge's F skills. Which means Scourge just can't make use curses, so you want to have a precision amulet, but you just can't do that, because again, none of the Vitality amulets have it. The only real option is Deadshot, but you're going to be really squishy in a Deadshot amulet. And again, you don't have toughness, so you're going to be taking a lot of power damage on Scourge, and Scourge just folds under power damage, because it has such a poor means of dealing with it. So for Scourge's sake, like, Scourge needs to be able to take toughness amulets. But right now it can't. Now, if you're a World v World Scourge, this doesn't matter, because if you're in World v World, you can just take Dire Gear, where you get a minor in both toughness and vitality, so hey, you got the best of everything. But I also kind of feel like the devs have forgotten that SPVP doesn't have those stats, so we can't pull that. Not to mention, it would also fix some of the issues Scourge is having in PvE. Like, Scourge is probably not going to be raid meta, because Scourge cannot manage its life force running a no vitality stat allocation right now, which means it can't do raid DPS at all, because it can't use its F skills with any kind of regularity, which just kills its DPS. So having it so that you have a higher life force pool without taking vitality, like I suggested earlier, where they just, normalize their life force pool at, say, 20,000 or so, would actually fix that, so that we might actually be able to do relevant DPS in PvE, and it would also allow us to take better synergizing amulets in PvP. Granted, it would slightly nerf us in World v World, where we have Dire Gear, because it would mean we wouldn't be getting Life Force scaling off the Dire Gear, since Dire Gear will give us a higher Shroud than, whatever the 20,000 normalization I was suggesting. But at the same time, I really don't think Necros are hurting in World v World. Like, it's the one game mode that Necromancers are completely dominant in, and Scourge is even more dominant in World v World than Reaper is, or it probably will be more dominant in World v World. So I really don't think that's a huge issue for us. So again, to recap, what I would like to see done is I would like to see our life force pool normalized at 20,000 regardless of vitality, and then make it so that it does not scale with vitality. So just have a flat 20,000 pool, and that allows us to pick up, toughness amulets and stuff that better synergize with the rest of the class than vitality stacking does. Because right now, again, as I said back when I first started talking, the big reason that we're completely dependent on supports is we have to stack Vitality, but if we're stacking Vitality, we have no way of refilling that pool, so we need to have a support with us to refill that pool. But if we have Toughness, we take less damage, so we need less healing to stay alive, so we self-sustain better. We'd still probably do well with a support, but we wouldn't be nearly as dependent. And that's about all I have to say. But yeah, hopefully they'll consider this, particularly for Scourge's sake, because Scourge has so many Lifeforce issues and survivability issues that aren't gonna be well fixed if they don't fix this whole dependence on Vitality problem that Scourge has. So hopefully we'll see a change there. And that's all I have to say.